Hello, I'm Doug Brown, and welcome to this episode of BarChat. Today my guest is Diane Whitney. She's a partner in the law firm of Pullman and Comley, where she practices land use and environmental law. Diane was the winner of the Connecticut Bar Association's Women in the Law Ladder Award in 2015, and she's chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. Our topic today is work-life balance. Welcome.
Thank you.
You know, work-life balance is so important for law firms and organizations to pay attention to these days, and it's often a misunderstood term. So why don't we start by talking about what is work-life balance?
What do I think work-life balance is?
Yeah, what do you think it is?
I think it is the tension that you have in trying to be a member of a demanding profession. This is obviously speaking for lawyers. Practice a demanding law and maintaining a personal life without going crazy.
Pretty simple. Do you think it's different today than it was in years past? Is it more complicated to have balance in work and in life?
I think it probably is, largely because the old model of someone practicing law was almost always a man who practiced law and had a spouse at home who took care of everything at home. Mm-hmm. So if he had to work all night and miss dinner and that sort of thing, although it might be regrettable, there was somebody else there to pick up the slack. That's largely not the case anymore. There are, of course, a lot of two-lawyer families, mm-hmm. but even if they're not both lawyers, the spouse is most often working also. Mm-hmm. So there isn't somebody to pick up the slack. So I think the tension has increased. And the practice of law has gotten more complicated and more demanding. And particularly after the economic downturn we've been through, there are new tensions. So I think there's always been a tension, but I think it's a great deal more now than it has been in the past.
Sure, and of course, the fact that we're much more connected now than we've ever been makes it even more challenging. And I know the culture in some law firms had been in the past that very much, law firm is your first, second, and third priority. And as we experience more stress and pressure in the practice, why should firms be concerned about a work-life balance? Why shouldn't they just work their associates to death? Because
they're going to lose valuable people. At a previous firm that I worked at, I was the head of the environmental department there, mm-hmm. and it was very demanding. There was a minimum 2,000-hour billable requirement for the year. And my concern was I was going to end up as the head of a department of all divorced people because it was so demanding. Law firms should be concerned because if they can't accommodate people's lives, they will lose valuable people, which is not to say they should be doormats. Mm-hmm. It's a demanding profession, and it's always going to be a demanding profession, and you need to give it your best effort. But it doesn't have to be your whole life.
And traditionally, in years past, the thought was that work-life balance was primarily a woman's issue. But it's really not just a woman's issue anymore, is it?
I don't think it is. I think it's very largely a woman's issue, but not entirely. I think there's a whole new crop of young male associates who are very concerned about being an active participant in their family life. And they want to coach soccer, and they want to take their children to daycare and things like that. So it's not just a woman's issue anymore, although it's probably weighted more
Sure.
on the part of women.
So if you're running a business, running your law firm, and you want to be accommodating and keep your people, but you still have to make clients happy and make budget, what are some things that you've seen law firms do to try to strike a balance themselves and address this issue?
And it's not easy. It'll sound like I'm saying everybody should do this and it's easy. It's not easy. But at my firm, for instance, we have 3 people right now, 3 young women, 1 partner and 2 associates who have had babies recently. They're all very valuable people. They've worked for the firm for several years, and we understand just how valuable they are, and we'd like to keep them forever. So when they asked if they could work a reduced schedule, we said yes. And that takes cooperation on everybody's part, mm-hmm. because particularly with the associates, there are partners who depend on them. But those partners are willing to accommodate their schedules too, because they know how good they are. And also, they don't abuse this privilege. If we need them, they're there. But as a rule, they're not working full-time.
So when firms are trying to see how to accommodate this, do you recommend that they spend time just talking with their associates and understanding what their needs are to try to figure out what kind of accommodations would work in advance, or do you wait for the associate to come to you?
That's a good question. You know, for a large firm, it probably would make sense to have a policy in place so that people would know what to expect. I know when we interview young female law students, very often I will get the question, what happens if I have a baby? And so if there's a policy that you can publicize ahead of time, it probably is a strength for your firm. But at the same time, other things will happen that you can't plan ahead.
Sure.
I also think firms, you know, a firm that values its people will be understanding if there's some sort of emergency. So there are a number of things firms can do to make it known that they in fact value you as a person and they want to make your life work, both in the demanding practice of law, and I'm not suggesting anybody sacrifice standards.
Sure.
But also in the fact that you have a life outside of the firm and should be able to enjoy it.
Well, this is such an important issue with all the time and money is invested in getting lawyers to become part of a culture and become productive, and certainly making it part of the law firm culture to consider this and help lawyers with this important issue is something that I think the most competitive firms are going to have to be doing.
I think so too, and it's going to be an advantage for them because they're going to get and keep really high quality people.
Terrific. Well, Diane, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this topic.
My pleasure.